So one of my favorite stories about graffiti is back in Fort Collins, Colorado. One night I went out to a concert, ended up bringing some paint with me, and then ended up thinking it was a great idea to do a piece on top of the Dairy Queen rooftop, which is on a main street in Fort Collins. And little did I know there was a cop sitting right there. Saw me painting. I grabbed all my paint and jumped off the side of the roof, but there was a small, narrow loading dock right there. And so I had to kind of jump in twists, and the momentum that my backpack had made my body twist, so I landed backwards. And I landed, fucked up both my heels, ripped through like a wooden fence, fell on my head, all my paint went everywhere. I had to grab all my paint, put it all together and run away through this really long, dark field. And somehow the cops did not find me. But, you know, it was the longest 3-mile hike I've ever done because, you know, walking on broken heels isn't really the most pleasant thing you can do. And situations like that, you know, happen a lot with graffiti writers, you know, dealing with police officers and whatnot. And another buddy of mine down in Denver on Colfax, we were painting right on the side, on the east side of Colfax, and cop ended up spotting us. And so we ran, and my buddy ended up jumping a fence that he thought was just a fence, but it ended up being like a 20-foot drop. So he pretty much fell to his demise, broke both of his, I don't know, broke both of his feet or something like that. And you know, we had to like drag him under a taxi cab and stuff like that, you know, to hide from the cops and whatnot. But, you know, that didn't stop him from painting. You know, he was in a wheelchair for about 3 or 4 months. And then, you know, we still brought him out to walls. We'd still paint. You know, I've never seen a guy paint in a wheelchair before, but it's pretty awesome. I know it happens frequently too, because, you know, there's been a lot of graffiti artists out there who's, you know, they've gotten injuries, they've hurt themselves and whatnot, and it doesn't stop. I mean, I've seen artists who, you know, graffiti artists in particular, who have injured themselves, you know, paralyzed, and they'll paint with their mouth. You know, they'll use their mouth and paint. So I don't know, the dedication that artists have in their form, you know, there's not much that you can do to stop them from doing what they like to do. You know, you can get paralyzed and you can still paint. You know, I believe Chuck Close, he's a really good example of that. You know, paralyzed, and he did realism. You know, like really realistic photos of people. And the guy got paralyzed, and, you know, he paints little tiny squares with little dots, and has apprentices, you know, like, you know, other people to put them up as mosaics to do these really incredible psychedelic looking portraits of people. So there's really no limit that you can have to where you can stop doing art. So yeah, artists are dedicated. It's nothing that we'll ever stop doing, whether it's illegal or frowned upon or whatever. You know, we'll always keep doing it. Um, so I write bits. My crew is Visual Music, aka Vice Mob. It's a crew that my buddy Eeks, he's RTD, Creatures, IYQ. He started this crew about 20 years ago up in Fort Collins, and it kind of died off for a while until he met all of my friends and whatnot. And it's picked up, it's gone down, highs and lows, whatever, but we're all family. So yeah, and my name Bits comes from kind of a stupid story. Back in high school, I used to sell weed, and I would get the munchies all the time. So I'd go out and buy a bunch of Skittles because I was addicted to Skittles. And two of my friends, one day I walked up and they just, I walked up to them and they were just like, "Fuck you, Bits." And I was, what the hell? Like, what did I do? And apparently this lasted for a whole semester. They called me Bits, and I thought it was some kind of derogatory term, like they're insulting me or something. But basically what happened was they got really high one day and decided they were just talking about me. They're like, "Yeah, he's always got Skittles." He's like Skittles and Bits, or Kibbles and Bits, Skittles and Bits. So that's kind of where my name comes from. And that was right when I first started writing graffiti, and I didn't have a name yet. So my buddy Jake was like, "Yo," like finally once they broke the news to me what it actually was, they were just like, "Well, why don't you just write Skittles?" And I was like, "What about Bits?" So I just started writing Bits. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
I'm such a sucker for this sound.
Huh?
I love this fucking sound.
Dude, have you heard this song?
It like melts my fucking, I don't know, it's weird.
As far as as far as a alter ego goes, it's not how I work it. Some people totally isolate their graffiti life from their personal life. For me, it just kind of blends all the way in. People know I write graffiti. I'm not scared of cops busting in my house because I don't do enough graffiti for that to happen. So for me, it's just who I am. A lot of people like to isolate themselves from that other persona, especially people who are doing it a lot, or have families or friends or something who's scoring on it. But yeah, with me and my friends, I mean, it's just kind of a normal thing that blends into our everyday life. So, back when I had a babysitter back in the day, she pretty much raised me. She would always give me color books and stuff like that. And apparently I was kind of good at it, I guess. And so she kept encouraging me to stay coloring and drawing and painting. But that I've always been drawing my whole life, but it wasn't until I saw that show Overhauling with Chip Foose, about the cars. They'd take these cars and Chip Foose would do these awesome designs, these awesome concept cars. And I was also into cars too because my ex-girlfriend, her dad was a big time Mopar fanatic. And yeah, I ended up just kind of fallen into it because I like to draw cars. And then my buddy who I was just talking about, who jumped over the big fence, in high school, he came up to me because he was writing graffiti back then. And he was, you know, I did like the Dodge letters and whatnot and like all these like calligraphy things. And he kept telling me, he's like, dude, like you need to start writing graffiti, like you'd be good at it. So I tried it out, and next thing I know, I was kind of into it. And that was when I was about 18 years old, you know, senior in high school. And yeah, so I started painting graffiti, and actually my first encounter with the police and my first encounter with graffiti was outside of my mom's house. There was this old, what do you call it? Like manhole. It was like a construction, like a cement manhole. And it was just sitting in the field. It's been there for years. We used to go hang out and jump in it when I was a little kid. So I thought it was a good idea to go paint it. And so I painted it in midday, and all of a sudden, next thing I know, a cop rolls up and ends up busting me. But there was no actual legal foundation to arrest me because it didn't belong to anybody. It was basically just a found object. So yeah, this cop was sweating me, asking me like who I know, like what crews I write, whatever. And he asked me, funny enough, he asked me if I know this dude Sewer, or Gore. He used to write Sewer. Nowadays he writes Skoo, and he's a pretty prominent graffiti artist in the United States. And yeah, so I had to explain to the officer that was actually my first time ever painting anything. So, and he didn't believe me, which was funny. So he almost searched my house, but that didn't happen, of course. And yeah, other than that, I mean, that's pretty much how I got into it. Was, you know, my buddy Trent Fisco just kind of encouraged me to start painting. And ever since then, because of him, I met some of my best friends that I've ever freaking talked to. You know, like all these guys I've met wouldn't have happened if it weren't for him. I would say, hold on, let me start over real quick. I'm just gonna chain smoke for a minute. It's a lot easier to talk for some reason, I don't know why. So when it goes to going over other people's work, if it's an illegal piece, that is highly disrespectful to go over somebody's piece that is done illegally, because you risk your freedom to do this. You know, it's something that's very personal, and if somebody goes over it, it's a lot of beef. But there's also other spots, you know, like legal walls, that they're reserved for people to paint pieces on or do whatever they want. And if there's a good piece up, you know, it's usually kind of etiquette to try to step it up a little bit. You know, so, you know, you can't just go over somebody's piece who's like way better than you with just like a throwy. So that's disrespectful. But if you cover it up and, like, you know, make sure it's all covered up, the piece isn't popping out on the tops or the bottoms or whatever, that's, you know, that's considered respect. You know, if you respectfully covered up someone's piece on a legal wall, that's usually okay. Unless it's like a commission wall or something like that, or an illegal wall, then that's a different story. But for the most part, like free walls, you know what they call them, free walls, that's usually understood. If you paint a piece, it's going to get covered up. Some of the walls that I paint, you can eventually scrape them off, and there's, 2-inch thick of paint just from over the years. And it's understood that you reserve the right to, paint over somebody. I mean, I've painted over some of the artists like that I've respected for years, even before I was in graffiti. But as long as you cover it up nice and make it nice and tidy and do your best to make it good, that's all it is. But if you go out on the street and go over somebody, you might get your ass kicked.
Where's Brian at?
He went to go walk his dog.
He's like, well, I was gonna bring some acid, but. And I was like, why didn't you?
Is Tato still coming up here?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, with graffiti, it's not something that comes naturally to most people. It takes a long time to even figure out how to do a good tag. And a lot of people don't see that. They just see some kind of signature. But what they don't realize is, it takes a long time to figure out the technique of using your utensil, whatever it is, whether it's a marker or a can of spray paint or a roller or something like that. And it takes a lot of practice. It's taken me 8 years to even figure out my own tag. It's something that is constantly, evolving. And, outsiders who don't really appreciate graffiti, they'll see that and they just see some kind of gang sign or whatever. But really, it's a skill that you acquire over time. And, learning different paints, different techniques, different motions, like can control, it's not easy. And I guarantee you, if you just walk up on the street and give somebody a can of spray paint, they're not going to be able to do what most of us do, because it takes a lot of practice. And as far as like the more artistical side of it, quote, that really transforms into a lot of graffiti artists' like background as far as what they do on the side. It's not always just graffiti. As far as me personally, I do graffiti, but I do more other kinds of art. And just the styles and techniques that you learn through graffiti, like the really intricate, catchy designs, that transfers into your other artwork as well. For me, like landscaping, doing landscapes, I like to bring in the aspects of like the design that is incorporating graffiti into my landscapes, into kind of a mesh, like just the design work and the line work and whatnot. It really transfers into every other kind of artwork that you do. I don't know, I think graffiti started out as such a radical idea that it started off as such a hold on, cut that. Graffiti started off as such a radical idea that it was so individualistic. And nowadays, graffiti's implanted into so many different things, graphic design, whatever, all this crap. And really the thing that makes it different is the fact that it's a it's like the fucking A, hold on. What am I trying to say? What's that one fucking art movement? Hold on. All right, maybe I'm gonna have to say something different. Yeah, so I would say what makes it different than other art cultures is that it's more family and friend based. You know, you grow up with the people that you write with. You know, you have similar interests. You know, you listen to similar music, maybe. And yeah, you kind of come through with just like similar qualities. You know, such as, you know, there's certain crews, you know, such as, you know, all across the United States, like TKO. Those guys are, you know, mostly Hispanic. You know, people who grew up in the same kind of situation. You know, you got crews like in Denver, RTD, you know, kind of guys like me, you know, people who like to just kick it. In Pueblo, you have the Creatures crew, kind of the same thing. You know, people who just like to kick back, go camping, do some graffiti every once in a while. And that's just kind of part of their life. So I'd say what makes it different is it's not a totally focused style of art, you know, because all these artists are doing different kinds of art on their side time too. But graffiti is just like one of those things that they do when they go out and, you know, get loose. Cut. Let's see, what else could I add to that?
Well, that we can.
Also,
Go ahead.
and it's not a style of art that's ever been really recognized in like universities and like on an academic level. So it's always been kind of a rebellious form of art. It's never been appreciated until the recent. And, you know, that kind of unites everybody. So, fuck, damn it.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, I'm bad at that, dude. I do that all the time. Almost every graph writer has been influenced by subway art because that's really where traditional graffiti came from, as far as the lettering, the letter structure, the colors, the technique, and all that. That was one of the, you know, most prominent moments of graffiti, which influenced so many artists, almost everybody. Unless you have some crazy radical idea, something came from that, from New York subway art. And I think it's good because, you know, it kind of finally made a structure for graffiti. Because people have been doing graffiti since, you know, all mankind. Everyone's been doing graffiti. But this kind of established an actual style of it. It combined abstract to whatever, everything. And so, yeah, that definitely was one of the biggest influences around the world as far as graffiti goes. And, fuck. What was I gonna say? I fucked that last part up. Maybe you can cut out like 2 sentences ago.
It's all good so far. It's been all good.
All right, cool. Let's see what else. I think that was about all I had to say. You just might have to find a nice little part to cut out.
Yeah.
Because I fucked up at the end.
Okay.
I was trying to have a nice solid ending, but. I'm not trying to blow smoke in your face.
That's okay.
I'm just trying to make a cool shot.
good?
That's good.
Black books are kind of like exchanging postcards to your family. It's a way to not only increase your skills, but also share it to other people and share memories. I've had black books pass around to me from all over the world, from Germany, New York, Arizona, New Mexico, the res, everywhere. And it's something that you kind of let travel for a little while, and then hopefully it comes back to you. Not always. But every time you do it, you know, it's always, you remember exactly what happened during that moment. Every time you do a piece in a black book, you can sit there and remember where you're at and what you're doing, how you felt, all this stuff. And people you forgot about, people who will maybe die or whatever. You know, that black book is a way to preserve, you know, that kind of, that social, you know, context that you have with all your friends. And it's something that, you know, you can keep your entire life if you take care of it. But there's also times that you send these black books off and you never get them back. Someone goes to jail or someone dies or you just lose contact with them or something like that. But yeah, they're a great way to improve your skills, exchange stuff. You know, you can put stickers in them, you can write poetry, you can do whatever you want with the black book. And it's a great way of communication.
You lose your sock, bro? That's not the funniest picture.
Graffiti's not a universal art. It's not universal to anybody. So a lot of people take graffiti as, you know, associated with their gangs or territory. And then there's people like me who strictly do it for art. And, you know, that kind of clashes a lot of times. For instance, up in Denver, there were spots that I used to be able to paint, you know, like freight trains, and they got taken over by a little bit more ghetto, you know, graffiti crews. So, you know, if you roll into their spots, you know, you never know. You might get stabbed, you might get shot. One of my buddies, my buddy Taser, RTD, he got stabbed over graffiti, you know, just a couple of years ago. And he's a friendly guy too. And, you know, the clash of all that, you know, graffiti is like, it's kind of, it's like a, there's no boundaries to it at all. So, you know, one person could be doing it for territorial resources or whatever, and then one guy might just be doing it just because it's fun. But if you paint over somebody else's spot, you know, you might get stabbed or shot. It's kind of simple as that. As far as Denver goes, it's not as bad as like LA, as far as like the whole, like, you know, escaping from the gang culture to do something else. But there are a lot of gang members in Denver who, they treat it like a gang. Like, yeah, they're a good graffiti crew. There's a lot of talented artists and whatnot, but they treat it like a gang. And if you disrespect them or go over their spots, you know, you're gonna get fucked up. So, yeah, and, you know, there's people like me and, you know, my crew, VM, we're all friendly, but when it comes to getting disrespected, you know, we're not, you know, we will scrap a little bit, but, you know, we're not on the level of shooting somebody or stabbing somebody. You know, it's more about just putting someone in their place if they disrespect, you know, something good. The definition of a toy is kind of broad, depending on the person. To me, a toy is somebody who has had enough time to put in the effort to increase their skills, but refuses to do it, and has no respect for any other person. A lot of other people consider a toy somebody who hasn't had the skills yet, you know, like a young kid or something like that, or someone who just got into it. I don't see that as a toy. I think that's a learning process, because you don't just pick up a can of spray paint and figure out, you know, you're not just going to be some superstar right away. You know, you have to actually put in the experience. But a toy is somebody who has had plenty of time to increase their skills and still has no respect for the culture, no respect for other artists or whatever. And oftentimes those guys will go out and, you know, like a mural, you know, like in Denver, I see it all the time. There's like a mural, perfectly nice mural, not even a graffiti artist, and some toy will come up and tag it up, and it's super disrespectful, you know, or someone who crosses out somebody, you know, or someone who walks up to a freight train and sees this nice piece and decides to go over it and leave it hanging. You know, that's just something that is not cool. It's not cool to do. And, you know, it's all right if you suck at graffiti, but as long as you're respectful at it, you know, go do your thing, get better. Like, try to encourage yourself to, you know, improve your skills a little bit.
I haven't thrown a pox on a fucking piece in a while.
Yeah, I don't really rep that crew
I
anymore.
don't either, man.
I don't talk to any of those dudes, so why do it?
Graffiti would not be the same if it were legal, because then it would just be like every other art. And a lot of graffiti artists don't consider themselves artists. So it would kind of just blow all that out the water, because that's kind of half the fun of it, is, you know, being rebellious about it. You know, that is half the fun. I mean, if you could just go up to any wall and paint on it, you'd just be like another artist. So the fact that you can get in trouble and go to jail and risk your life, all this crap, that's really what makes it mostly fun. Other than the technique of like building your style, that's really what we do it for. You know, it's the rebellious aspect of it. And if graffiti were to be legalized, then it wouldn't be unique anymore at all. I mean, everyone and their mother would be a graffiti artist, I guess. You know, anyone could walk up to anything and do it. No consequences, you know, they wouldn't have to suffer through all the legal and physical issues that, you know, the forefounders had to deal with. You know, it just wouldn't be the same. And I mean, I wish it wasn't so consequential. You know, I wish people didn't have to go to, I mean, I've heard of people going to prison for graffiti, and I think that's ridiculous, because it's pretty harmless. Unless you're really vandalizing something that's worth saving, then I don't see what the big deal is. You know, a wall's a wall. It's ugly anyways, so why don't you just paint it? But, you know, people who vandalize in other ways, such as like sacred monuments and personal housing and stuff like that, you know, I feel like that's a different story. But in the city, it's ugly, it's dirty, it sucks, no one likes it. You know, might as well throw up some tags, put up some color, you know, do that. Make it a little bit more interesting.
Yeah. No. Super chilled out. Hey, Lola. Come on here. Lola, let's go.
I would say that a lot of vandals out there do deserve to get arrested because they do stupid shit. You know, tagging up somebody's house or a church or a school or something like that, you know, it's not really cool. But on, you know, some ugly alleyway, whatever, doing a tag, I don't think you should go to jail for it. You know, it just doesn't seem appropriate. There should be some other alternative way to deal with it. And a lot of these police officers will, if they catch you, they will take you in the alley and beat the shit out of you. And that almost happened to me once, but I narrowly avoided it. And also in places that have like high amount of graffiti, you know, instead of spending $7 billion on covering up graffiti, you should invest some kind of money into the community to cover it up with something else instead of just, you know, whitewashing it. And I think that's something that's good for the community, and it would save a lot of money, and, you know, maybe change the views that people have about street art. Same thing with graffiti artists. Police officers are also, they're all different. You can run into a nice cop, you can run into a bad cop. You might run into a cop who will let you go. You might run into a cop who will beat your ass and still charge you. And I personally know a police officer in Longmont who rolled up on a bunch of graffiti artists painting in an alley and walked up to, he was part of the gang unit, and he was really, really cool with all the gang members in Longmont. And walked up on him, scared the shit out of him, and he was like, hey, no, it's cool. Like, this looks good. I'm gonna come back in a couple hours and see how it looks. Let him go, no problem. Or you could be like me, where, you know, you tag up a little bus bench and cops freaking throw you against the freaking wall, arrest you, throw you in jail, talk shit, degrade you, do all this crap. I mean, I haven't even had that many bad stories about the police officers because I've generally had good luck with them, but I know a lot of people who have gotten really abused by police officers. So I guess it kind of goes person to person with every situation, graffiti artists and police officers.
You don't get son of a nothing.
Like the warmth on the let's go.
Doing graffiti is kind of an escape. Usually I do the most graffiti when I'm depressed and I need to get out of the house and, you know, get the fuck out of there. And it doesn't matter, you know, at that point, if anyone who's ever dealt with depression, they know that it's just kind of like, fuck it, you know, like I'm gonna go do this, and if I end up going to jail for it, whatever, I'm gonna go have a good time. And at the same time, there's also times in my life where I've been trying not to get in trouble, and doing a little bit less graffiti has also helped in a way, because I'm not stressed out about going to jail every day. And graffiti just kind of turns into this, for me personally, it's not my entire life. It's just a small aspect that I'm always thinking about it. I'm always doing it. I'm always doing whatever. But it's not like I'm out every night painting. But it's always an aspect. But for people like me, art in general is really the main focus. Whether it's doing graffiti, doing canvases, doing graphic design, whatever, you know, drawing people's names, whatever. It's something that I think about and I do every single day, whether or not I'm actually out doing graffiti. So it's a really good, it's therapeutic for sure. But I mean, I know some guys who their entire lives are revolved around graffiti. Like they will steal, they will fucking sell dope, they will do whatever they fucking can to get a little bus ticket up to Chicago or California or whatever just to do some graffiti. And that's their entire lives. And that's cool, you know, I mean, if you're that hardcore, go for it. I respect you for that. But there's also other people, you know, we have lives, you know, we have school, we have work, we have dogs. And, you know, we have to take care of stuff. So graffiti can't really be our entire lives. And, you know, I've been busted shoplifting before, and that's also a huge part of graffiti culture too, is what they call racking. And that's, you know, going into Home Depot and loading up a bunch of paint, walking out, going to Whole Foods, getting a bunch of frickin' lobster and, you know, all your groceries, walking out. Yeah, I got busted doing that before. And a lot of people look at me and they think I'm childish for it. And I'm kind of like, yeah, a little bit, but it's fun, you know, that's part of the culture. It's getting away with shit that you shouldn't do. And that has a lot to do with, you know, kind of the classic graffiti culture, because that's what they used to do back in the day is, you know, they didn't have money to buy spray paint, so they'd just go in there and take it. And it's like a whole art in itself is racking. You know, how can you get away with stealing all this fucking crap and get away with it? That's kind of the same thing with graffiti. How can you do all this and somehow get away with it? And most people will get busted. So that's just kind of the way of the game, I guess.
She's right there.
Sometimes I call and like literally behind me.
Well, there's a lot of artists out there who use graffiti as social action. For me, that's not the case. I strictly do graffiti because I think it's fun. I like to write my name. You know, I like to find different techniques. I like to switch up styles, do whatever. But a lot of other artists out there use it as a, you know, like a channel for political messages and stuff like that, which is cool. And that's also one thing that kind of separates street art from graffiti, is street artists usually have some kind of a message. Most traditional graffiti writers like myself, we just like to put up our name. We like painting. That's all there is to it. You know, it's like going out and hanging out with your buddies, getting some beers, going and rocking a piece. Street artists usually like to have some kind of a message, you know, whether it's like stencil art or some kind of political shit or whatever. So that's kind of what separates us from street artists, is that we strictly just want to go out and paint. Other people have other intentions, which is cool. You know, I think it's good. And that's what really attracts, you know, lately mainstream culture has been like really tied into street artists, because they come out with these really clever ideas to put on buildings and stuff like that. And so I think that's been building up the tolerance for like graffiti artists, not as far as legally, but, you know, as far as like public etiquette. You know, like people don't really look down to graffiti artists like they used to, because there's a message involved and it's creative and whatnot. But when it comes to guys like us, you know, we just like to go out and, you know, arm our techniques a little bit and, you know, paint something new, use different colors, different line work, and yeah, just basically go have a good time, not be so serious about it. Social media has changed graffiti so much. Back in the day, you used to have to actually go to the place where artists were doing these things, or people would mail, Polaroids to each other. That's the only way you knew who was doing what. Now you can get on a phone or your computer and you can look up anything. You could be famous instantly just by having the right technique of using social media. And back when, the only way that graffiti artists were popular was because people would actually take their photos and send them to people, or people would actually see it in person. And that's how people got famous back in the day. And usually there was no face on it either, like no one knew who these people were. They didn't know if they're black, white, purple, whatever. And yeah, nowadays, you have Instagram and Facebook and all this shit, and you can literally see everybody's lives, like people post up their pieces, they have pictures with their girlfriends and whatnot, and their little statuses. So you get like, you lost all the mystery that, previous generations didn't have before, because you saw somebody like a Mitt or Eeks or somebody like that, and you're just sitting there wondering, like, what is this guy like? I've never met him, I've never seen him. I might have met him, I have no idea. But nowadays you can get on a computer and find all that shit out. So yeah, that takes away a lot of the mysterious, anonymous art that came with the previous generations. So it's changed a lot, but it's also made it to a point where, it makes it easier for artists to connect. Because back then you had to search to find graffiti artists. Nowadays, hop on Facebook, ask somebody, hey, I'm gonna be in Chicago, can you link me up with somebody? And boom, got a number. But back then you had to like actually search. And that was before my time too, but that's what a lot of my people were telling me, is that it wasn't the same back then before the whole internet boom. And it's definitely changed the game a lot in those kind of aspects. Appropriation is inevitable. As anthropologists, we see it every day. Appropriation comes in so many different forms, and graffiti is just another victim of it. And I guess sometimes you just have to deal with it. If people can find a good way to make some money and they have skills in it, let them do it, there's a lot of people like, like Banksy, that's like such an appropriate style, but he still actually kind of stayed true to his shit. But like a lot of street artists out there will take advantage of what took, 40 years to gain, and, not really do any street art at all. They just kind of appropriate the style and kind of use it as their own. And yeah, I might sit there and scorn them, but that's their business. It's business. If someone can find a niche that they can do, they're gonna do it. And there's nothing else anyone can do about it. You can sit there and be salty and, like some of the older cats that I hang out with, they hate it because, they grew up doing graffiti since the 90s or 80s or whatever. And now all these newer guys are growing up who were born in 1995 and using graffiti as some kind of crazy marketing scheme, to make a bunch of money, and it really pisses them off. And I understand that, but, times change. Nothing ever stays the same. If people find a way to make some money, they're gonna do it. And if they enjoy doing it, they're gonna do it. So I don't think there's any way to fix it. There's no way to say it's bad. People are gonna, graffiti eventually caught on to a mainstream thing, and what do you expect? That's what happens. I guess I'd say just don't generalize it, because I've met people who are total rednecks who are incredible at graffiti. I've met gangbangers who are incredibly good at graffiti. I've met people like me and you, or whoever's watching, who are really awesome at graffiti. And there's no really stereotype for it, other than the fact that everyone thinks it's a bunch of, you know, Hispanic kids or Puerto Rican kids running around with black hoodies and a backpack and a marker, because that's not really how it goes. You know, you can travel all around the world. You can meet people who climb mountains and, you know, do whatever, totally in tune with nature or whatever, and you drop them off in the city and they're out there tagging. So there's no actual generalization for it. So I don't know, I guess I'd say just not to judge the book by its cover, because graffiti is something that, you know, anyone can do. I guess I'd like to give a shout out to my man up in Cincinnati, Detour, IWS, VM, Eeks, VM, RTD, Creatures, my homie Fisco, who's in recovery, trying to get his life back together, praying for him every day, my man Fuse, you know, our MC of the crew, Cosmo, our DJ, Scuba, who's just been killing the game lately, RTD, Down for Whatever, Foreskin, Bird, Flannel, and just like pretty much anyone else who I've come across over the years who've kept me going, you know, been, you know, keeping me positive, you know, ins and outs, all the stupid ass times we've had getting drunk and doing drugs. Yeah, just all my friends, man. I love them all. Graffiti's brought us all together, so for better or for worse, we're here.
Cool. Cool.
Right on.
For all its material advantages, the sedentary life has left us edgy, unfulfilled. Even after 400 generations in villages and cities, we haven't forgotten. The open road still softly calls, like a nearly forgotten song of childhood. We invest far-off places with a certain romance. The appeal, I suspect, has been meticulously crafted by natural selection as an essential element in our survival. Long summers, mild winters, rich harvests, plentiful game. None of them lasts forever. Your own life, or your band's, or even your species might be owed to a restless few drawn by a craving they can hardly articulate or understand, to undiscovered lands and new worlds. devil in Moby Dick spoke for wanderers in all epochs and meridians. He said, I am tormented with an everlasting itch for things remote. I love to sail forbidden seas. Maybe it's a little early. Maybe the time is not quite yet. But those other worlds, promising untold opportunities, beckon. Silently, they orbit the sun, waiting.